Howdy, it's Josh again. Here is the third video in this series documenting 9 faculty engaging in digital humanities for their first time during this summer of 2020. Now that each of the fellows introduced themselves and their digital humanities topics, the first consideration is the availability of data, including tables and unstructured text content. Some of the fellows are coming into this program with their data sets in hand and need to clean, refine, and process their data before analyzing it. For example, Dr. Sam Parler, faculty in the School of Music. You may recall Sam from the previous video. He has been combing through newspaper archives from Fort Worth through the 1930s and 40s and entering into Excel music venues, their locations, and other supplemental information that impact or are connected to the music scene. We are currently walking Sam through geocoding his addresses using the World Geocoding Service in ArcGIS Desktop, and he envisions an interactive map as his final goal. Follow along as Sam walks through a portion of his data with us.
So what I decided to do is to start making separate sheets so that you can sort of have layers, and I can play around with the different layers and see, what's actually going to be useful and what is not going to be so useful. So the main concern is this one on musical venues, which there may be a few more to add, but yeah, it runs to, I guess 27 places right now. And I've gone back through my materials, just trying to organize the information that I want to appear on the map. So I realized there are really only 3 different types of musical genres that I want to have represented. One is what I'm calling pop/jazz, and some of these I have it reversed as jazz/pop, so I'll have to change that. Another is Western swing, and then another is classical. But then also labeling it by race, was this primarily and the nomenclature gets a little tricky. I'm using the word white to mean they were exclusively white venues, or they had strictly segregated seating, or maybe separate showing times for Black audiences and white audiences, versus Black venues, which tended to be Black owned and catered primarily to a Black audience, but for a variety of reasons, segregation laws were not as stringently upheld at those venues. And of course, I've also started a separate Word document where I sort of explain some of that nomenclature as well.
Next, here is Julie Holcomb, faculty in Museum Studies. You may recall Julie from the previous video, where she discusses her research on the Hicksite Orthodox schism within Quakerism. She is working with pamphlets over a 9-year period and intends to analyze how Quakers are framing the separation that takes place. She is planning on analyzing terms and the tone of language in the pamphlets across a 9-year period. Julie does not have any of the pamphlets in digitized format as of now. While not all of the pamphlets she is analyzing is available within the HathiTrust, many are included. She is using the HTRC, or HathiTrust Research Center, to begin analyzing her content. Using the built-in HTRC algorithms, Julie is exploring the token count and tag cloud creator to measure the use of terms over time.
It was interesting to look at this in comparison. Then I was looking at this in comparison to the more broadly focused collection, and I haven't done much with that, but just sort of seeing that a lot of the same words are coming up. Which is not surprising, but it was just interesting to compare the one that was more broadly focused, because the one that's more broadly focused, there are a lot of there are some like reprints of George Fox and William Penn's writings and Barclay's writings, and there are some other things that are coming up. And then like Quakers are big about writing memorials and things about their ministers, so that's included in this broader set. So it was interesting to see kind of last night I was playing around with it and looking at that'll have a lot of the same terms are showing up in both groups.
Here is Julie describing her data and how it may impact the scope of what she can accomplish this summer.
I think that my defining success would be focusing on the text data mining. Obviously, I want to learn all of these other tools, but focusing on the text data mining. And I would say focusing on the Haughty Trust collection, and then focusing on the materials at Swarthmore and Haverford. Since I know I've probably got a lot of the materials already in digital form from those collections. So if I could complete, the text data mining of those, data sets from those 3 collections, I would consider that successful.
Let's shift focus to Dr. Nicholas Werse, Faculty in Religion and the Graduate Writing Coordinator in the School of Education. Now, Nick is tracking the shifting economic industries in Coryell County as reflected in the Gatesville Messenger from 1920 until about 1981. Coryell County is a very rural county in central Texas. Let's follow along as Nick uses Google's Ngram Viewer to explore the primary ideas across this large corpus over time, and then as he discusses possible options for his research.
Okay, and as you can tell, I did oil, farm, prison, cattle. Oil was pretty inconsistent throughout. It peaks and declines as the oil market fluctuates over the 20th century. In Gatesville, I don't think it's going to be as much of a player, but I can run it just kind of see what comes up. With farming, that's where it kind of peaks there in the 1950s and then begins to decline. So since I do have access to 1955 through 2008, I could conceivably at least track that decline. One of the things that was surprising to me was any kind of prison language, stayed fairly consistent. So I'd be curious to see if it does the same thing in Gatesville in the second half of the 20th century or not. So one option is I could run these Lima searches within the newspaperarchive.org database, get the numbers that I need for each of these terms, and then compare them with what we see just in the second half of the 20th century. That would be of greater value for the book. The problem with that is that it would not give me an opportunity to exercise the full breadth of the technical skills that I'm trying to learn out of this fellowship. And so that brings me to the next topic about possibly finding another newspaper that would be comparable. Something likely in the Central Texas area, hopefully something in, I don't know how small of a town we're going to find, but I'm also open to those options.
Lastly, here's Dr. Nicole Kenley, English Department. As the previous video introduced, Nicole is examining the ways in which detective fiction as a genre has been changed by globalization and the threats of global crime. Specifically, her intention is to focus on how language describing these technologies represents the changes in the ways these novels address these technologies. Nicole is also using the HTRC algorithms to begin analyzing her corpus. Most helpful at this early stage is the token count and tag cloud creator, which will allow her to quickly observe the use of terms over time. Join me. Let's watch Nicole very eloquently describe how the availability of mineable content is driving her scope.
So when I started this project, I had very little idea how difficult it would be to get some of the resources that I needed in the formats that I would need to do text data mining. I have all of these novels in print. It didn't occur to me how difficult the availability and permissions might be. And so I've been learning many workarounds with Josh's help. and Eileen's help to try to figure out what I can get access to and what tools I can use. However, it's definitely curtailed the initial scope of my project. So for example, even just the 3 forensic authors that I work on the most and that I thought I would be able to just easily access all their materials, I've learned that I can get 7 of one and 13 of another. And these authors have corpuses that are 2 and 3 times that size in terms of the number of novels they've written. So I've had to adjust my scope quite a bit. And instead, I'm going to be looking at more of a proof of concept to say, hey, are the terms moving around in the way that I imagined just from this small sample size? So the summer is an opportunity to develop that proof of concept on a smaller scale. And then I can continue the project once I've developed these tools and I have this proof of concept. One thing I could do is begin to contact the publishers directly and see if I could get copyright permissions to access all of the works that I had been envisioning. So it's been an adjustment, but in many ways, given my newness to text data mining, it's not the worst thing in the world either, because it gives me the opportunity to develop some facility with some of the basics, and I can walk before I will run in the future.